It's been a long time. I see a
Good
lot of
morning.
familiar faces here, and I am so glad to see you. Um, we have done this for so many years, and it is a blessing to be able to do it one more time. Hi, Daryl McMillan, Norma, Francisco. There's so many of you that I have seen for many years, and I'm really glad that you're back. One of the things I want you to do when we do this next time, if you haven't already, bring some of those young folks in, because we need a new crop of grantees, proposal writers, and we want our young people to be involved in the philanthropic process from one end or the other, either as a receiver or as a giver. So please bring them in. But this is Getting Funded Part 1, Elements of Successful Proposal Writing from Start to Finish 2023. And it is Part 1 because Part 2 is going to be researching grants. Now, I didn't include that. That usually is included in the presentation that I do, but I didn't include it this time because the time frame is so short. When we have done this in the past, we've done it in person, and it usually has been a 4-hour training. So it may seem a little fast to some of you. Hi, Daryl, what you doing? Daryl should be here presenting too, actually, today, because Daryl knows all about this from the very beginning. Good to see. So anyway, but so what we're going to do is have next month, we're going to have Getting Funded Part 2. And that is going to be, and you'll see a little bit more, you'll be able to register a little bit later, but that's going to be taught by our good friend, Michelle Edmond. And I know you all know Michelle Edmond from JAMCO, but Michelle is going to show us how to do funding research. Used to be difficult, easy to do funding research because we had the Foundation Center, but now we don't have that Foundation Center library anymore. We also don't have the cooperating collections anymore as we used to. And so now we have to definitely go through another entree, which is Candid. And there is a cost to that. But you can still go through the public library system to do some really solid research, and you're going to learn about that and learn how to identify your funding partners in Getting Funded Part 2. Next slide. And I'm Carmen Bogan. I'm the CEO of the Bogan Group. I'm a consultant to nonprofit organizations and faith-based organizations, and I'm co-founder of A Model Built on Faith. You're going to meet, or at least get a chance to talk to a very familiar face who is also a co-founder. I include Sandra Alexander as a co-founder as well, because she's been with this program from the very beginning. And she has been very patient with all of us in bringing it to this point. Next. So here is part of our A Model Built on Faith team. We have other team members. First of all, I don't see the person that I'm going to be introducing you to next, but I want to give a shout out to Sandra Alexander, who's the executive director of Occur. She has been with this organization through good times, through bad times, and everything in between. Michelle Miles Chambers, she's our senior program officer, and she is also one of the co-founders of this program, along with Sandra Alexander and David Glover, who was our fearless leader many years ago, and me. Ebony, you're going to see Ebony today. Ebony is a program assistant with Faith. Denise DeLuca, who's an outreach specialist. Shai Alderman, operations manager, and Shai is behind the scenes working her magic. And Simone Stokes, you get all these blast outs and you're getting them on a regular basis, and that is coming from Simone. And so that is the team. Next, please. As I said, I want to tell you a little bit about a special program that we have. Some of you know about it, some of you don't, but you should. And it is the Black Business Capacity Building Program. The program manager is Ndidi Love, and I'm going to ask Ndidi to take a couple seconds right now, a couple minutes, I should say, to tell you all about this program because there's some opportunities for funding here for small Black businesses. Ndidi?
Yes, thank you so much, Carmen. I'm very excited to bridge this gap that we sometimes see between Black for-profit businesses and nonprofits. So I'm very happy to just introduce this program to you all. And so we've been doing this for a couple of years at Occur, and we provide capacity building services and navigation services to businesses that are emerging, or you've kind of gotten your feet on the ground and you know where you want to go. And so you have some goals. It is our job to help you get there. In terms of financial literacy and finding adequate funding and diverse types of funding for your business, we work with folks who are looking to get business grants. We work with nonprofits who are looking to get different types of foundation funding. We look at things like crowdsourced funding. We look at angel investment. We look at getting you into different forms of accelerators and incubators to help grow and develop your business or your nonprofit. And so very often we see nonprofits X them out of these types of services, but very much so you need some of these services. Many nonprofits are getting their licensing, getting their certifications. You all have to get your business licenses like everyone else. You're getting business bank accounts, all these different things. And so we want to be able to set you up with a business counselor that you can go over all of your goals, all of your wants and desires for your business. And we will connect you with programs, accelerators, funding opportunities to fit those. And so I don't want you all to leave this space thinking that nonprofits aren't eligible. I get emails all the time asking if nonprofits are eligible for this program. You all definitely are. We do have space for 2 pilot programs. And so if there are 2 businesses or organizations that are really in this wonderful sweet spot of growth, we're willing to work with you and invest a little bit more time and energy and funds into getting you to a wonderful place. And so we do have a slate of consultants and experts who come in and provide tailored support. So if you say, Ndidi, I want to start a makeup brand for my nonprofit, or my organization is going to have, all the gear. So we're going to have sweaters and t-shirts and shoes and hats or whatever. We can set you up with somebody who can help you develop those products. A big piece around the Black Business Capacity Building Program for this year is we very much so want to get you all out in public, building connections, having access to the small business and economic development ecosystem. So we will be at Small Business Week for Oakland this year. We'll be going to different conferences and events to really get folks into this ecosystem and into a space where they're confident and they have their business plan and pitch deck that they can put on the table, get some funding, get those goals met. And so I'm very excited to be able to bridge the gap and ensure that some of our nonprofits are getting this support. We have had them participate, and since we're all in the nonprofit world, I will tell you, sometimes it's a little bit easier to get the funding into your bank account as a nonprofit. And so I'm very excited to be here with you all. I'm going to put in the chat how to get involved. We are taking applications, and I'm going to leave my email in here as well, so you all can contact me, but we are taking applications. Our program is going to ramp up in the next 2 weeks. So please, if you're interested, get on tap with us and we'll be sure to support you.
Okay.
We will not be out at Black Joy Parade. I unfortunately will be at the Oakland Museum talking about reparations and how those affect Black businesses and what they need to do for Black businesses during that time. So I will be sliding by Black Joy, but you all can catch us at Small Business Week.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And make sure to use the chat if you have any other questions of Ndidi. And then on the slide, as you can see, that there is an email as well. Ndidi, do you have a preference? Is this correct? businessassistance@occurnow.org. Okay, so you can contact Ndidi there. And also, if you have any questions or you want her to get in touch with you, then feel free to put that in the chat so that we can make those connections. Next slide, please. Thank you, Ndidi. And this may be a surprise to some people, but not to others. But we will be having we have a new executive director on right now. So we actually are in the land of plenty because Sandra is still working with us. And I don't know in what capacity, but she is still in the capacity of executive director. But we also have David B. Franklin, and you're going to get the official welcome. And there will be some official welcome activities, I believe, for Dr. Franklin, but just join me in shouting out to him. And we're so happy that he's with us. Next. As we do in this training, for those of you who have been in the training before, you know that one of the things we like to do is to put together a pre-test and a post-test of the information. This is a pretty meaty presentation. There's a lot of information. If you already know how to write proposals, then we could go a little faster. But there are some people who maybe don't feel as comfortable as others. And so what we're going to do is give a pre-test to see how much you already know, and a post-test to see how much you learned during this time. But we're going to take it at a pace that assumes that you are hearing it for the first time. So if you feel that I'm going into too much detail, then please bear with us. But if I'm not going into enough detail, then ask questions along the way, okay? So Ebony, you can start the pre-test. And I don't know if there's a need, Ebony, for any kind of explanation of how to do this, or if it's self-explanatory. You can unmute yourself and let us know.
Yes, it popped up already, so it should be right on your screen. And if you're using your phone, I'm not sure if it pops up on your phone or not, but if you're using a computer, tablet, or laptop, it should be on your screen right now.
Yes, and what do? You just click with your pointer?
Yep, it's multiple choice. It's multiple choice. Just click true or false.
Okay.
And
now, Ebony, I'm sorry that I didn't ask you this before, but do we see the results of this?
no. Well,
Okay.
you will see it once I end it. You will see it immediately, and I believe everyone else should be able to see it too.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to give you, how many questions do we have here?
We have 10 questions, and
Okay.
so far 6%.
Okay. Okay, everybody, we need you to do this. We want to make sure that we are doing a training that is impactful, and so we need your input. So
is it a way to put the questions in the chat, because it didn't come up on my phone?
If you put your name in the chat for us, and then we'll get it to you.
Okay, what percentage are we at, Ebony?
We have 14 out of 49 respondees and counting. We're going up 17, we're going up.
Okay, keep it going up. Keep it going up, guys.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm on my phone doing it because I'm traveling, so I just submitted the survey. I hope it was received. Good questions.
Okay, great. Okay, so after we have done this, Ebony, would you work with the person who's on the phone to make sure
yes, I see
they
it right
are
here.
included? Okay. And in the meantime, we will continue with the folks who are here with us as participants. And you let me know when we have a good representation of this, because the post-test doesn't do us much good if we have not done the pre-test. It's a comparison.
We have 28 out of 49 so far participating, minus the ones on the phone.
Okay. Come on, guys, we're waiting for you.
We're at 32 now out of 49.
Okay, okay, this is good. This is good. Thank you.
Making progress.
Come on. Answer those questions. Come on. Don't play with me, y'all. Answer the question.
We're moving.
All right. And for those of you who have not heard of the Socratic method, you may learn about it during this. So answer the questions. Socratic method means I will call on you. So anybody who's been to my trainings knows that I will walk up to you and call on you. So
We're almost there. We have
So
39 out of
excited to
40.
be here.
we are excited to have you here with your wonderful organization too, My Sister's Keeper.
Amen.
Amen. Okay.
We have 37 out of 49. So
Okay.
75.
Okay. We'll get to
participation.
40 and we'll go.
Okay.
We also have a number of staff members on, so probably have
Okay.
most of them now.
All right. Are we about there?
We're at 77% participation, 39, said hit
Okay.
40, then we end the poll.
When we get to 40, we will end the poll.
And we're at 40. I
Okay,
am
good.
closing the poll now.
All right, everybody, we're closing it. Okay, next slide, please.
Do you want me to share the results?
Yes, that would be great. Why don't you pop it up there?
I want you to pop up. Let me know if it pops up, if y'all can see it.
Okay, first question. It is always best to provide a funder with a long format proposal with pictures of your clients to make sure they are impressed. And 10% of you said true and 90% said false. And we're not going to say what the correct answers are until we get to the end. A goal must be measurable, true, and 5% said false. 95 said a goal must be measurable. Okay, 3 goals and objectives are the same thing. Okay, we see that 12% said true and 88% said false. You don't need to worry about evaluation until the end of the program. 22% said true, 98% said false. It's important to provide data to support your description of program needs. 100% said true. 6, a proposal summary should be written before the rest of the proposal. 61 said true. 39% said false. The largest source of revenues for nonprofits is foundations. 37% said true. 63% said false. Future funding refers to an agency's strategies for developing additional funding to sustain the program. 95% said true. 5% said false. The organization's mission is an important part of program planning. 100% said true. A problem and a need are the same thing. 12% said true and 88% said false. Thank you very much. So this is getting interesting now. All right. So the training objectives of this training are to learn a little bit about the changing philanthropic landscape. And I'm delighted that we have Michelle Miles Chambers here. Heads up, Michelle, because that's one of the things I'm going to want you to talk about when I call on you. So the needs/impact funding connection, the grantor's point of view, again, Michelle, I'm going to be calling on you for that. Why and how to craft a master proposal, the importance of finding the right funder. Next, please. Why funders give. One of the reasons that funders give is that your program helps funders to realize their mission. There is an impact that they need to make in communities. And so it's really important that you're clear on what your mission is, what it is that you do, and the impact that you make in a community. Because if you know that, it's going to be easier for you to find a funding partner that is a real partner. They need those partners to help them make the impact, because you are the ones who have your arms outstretched into the community to show them how that work is actually unfolding. Private foundations must make charitable contributions to comply with their tax codes as well. But one of the things I want to give you a heads up on at the very beginning of this is that we're not going to be just talking about private foundations. We're going to be talking about funders across the board. Next slide. We're going to run a little video here. For some reason, the sound isn't there, but you'll still get a chance to see what this is about. It's the annual report on philanthropy, and you'll see a few of the trends in philanthropy for 2021. Okay. Giving by individuals, 67% of that, 19 given by funders, bequests, 9, and 4% giving by corporations. A lot of this money is given for religion, and then education, human services, foundations, public society benefit, health, international, arts, environmental, and I can't even see what it says down here. But that's giving 2022. Next slide. So the whole point of that is just to let you know that you really don't, I'm seeing the chat. Can someone tell me what I need to do? Do I need to close this chat down here because it's very, hold on. Okay, got it. So the whole point of this is to let you know that you need to diversify your funding stream, and that there are lots of different kinds of funders. And as you see, they don't all give at the same level. So there are some funders that are big time funders in terms of being the primary funders for the kind of work that you may be doing. And then there are others that give less. You'll see that when we talk about individual donors, a lot of times what we're talking about is funders who are giving in faith-based organizations. So for those of you who go to faith organizations that have tithes and offering or regular offerings on a weekly basis or on a regular basis, when they talk about individual donors, that big chunk of money is included in that as well. So we're talking sometimes about parishioners who are giving in faith-based organizations. But in addition to that, one of the things that I feel that is underutilized is for nonprofit organizations, particularly in communities of color, of finding funders who are individual donors and building your own individual donor base. If you can build your own individual donor base, then you have a base of unrestricted funding that will help you then to step back a little bit from the foundation funding and the corporate funding. And when I say step back, I mean not to rely on them fundamentally as being your sole source of funding. So we need to talk about that a little bit too. But finding the right mix in saying that, understand that we're talking about individual donors, we're talking about foundation funding, corporate funding, and there are two types of corporate funding. There's the corporate funding that comes out of their profit stream, and then there's the corporate funding that comes out of a corporate foundation. So when you're approaching a corporation, you can actually approach them 2 times because there are 2 sources within that organization. And then we're looking at fees for services. Yes, nonprofits can charge fees for services. I can't tell you exactly how much you can charge because that's a fine line, and you may want to talk to an attorney or someone who can give you for your organization the amount that you can charge. But yes, you can charge fees for services. Now let's just talk about the types of services that you might want to charge for. So some organizations charge for childcare. Some may charge for some of the products that they may produce, but there's a wide range of fees for services, and don't strike that off of your funding mix. When you diversify, you definitely should include that. And then you have federal and municipal government funding. There's some money that comes down to your government, to your city, to your area that you may be able to apply for, you may qualify for simply because of the kind of work that you do. and that government or a federal or municipal entity may be funding the type of work that you do. So you automatically may qualify for that. Ebony, I see your hand up.
Hi,
Why
we
are
have a
you using an orange hand, Ebony? Can you find like a brown one? This Black History Month.
Oh, you just called me out. I will do better. I promise. I will
Thank
do.
you.
We do have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Will there be training on best practices for building and managing a strong donor base?
You know what? That's a good question. And I think that there's a possibility that we could add that even to this series. But I want to show you something. I brought a book here. I don't know how many of you were involved in a training we did with Kim Klein. Kim Klein is a consultant who specializes in building individual donor bases. And the thing that's so cool about Kim Klein, I don't even know if she's still doing it, is that Kim did a special session for us. And she's a very high level, very well-known consultant. And she wrote a book. I don't know what year it was, but I would venture to say that it is still relevant to the topic. And I don't know if you can see it, but it says, the title of it, and here it is, this is what it looks like. And the title of it is Reliable Fundraising in Unreliable Times. And what that means is that if you can get a solid base of individual donors, then you have found some reliable funding in unreliable times, because those people that are committed to you are going to continue to give, even if it's difficult for you to find other sources of funding. So just want to have that, keep that in mind. A word about fundraisers. Now, there was a time that I just said, don't do fundraisers. Don't go up there getting, renting stuff and, going to, because after you've paid all your bills, you may have made like $250. Now, if your reason for doing the event was to get contacts and make special friends and maybe even identify individuals who could be individual donors, then yeah, maybe the fundraiser would be a good thing to do. But there was a period of time where I just felt that it was a big waste of human resources and other resources for the return on your investment. But I've changed my mind about that. And the reason I've changed my mind about that is because I've seen that there are organizations that have been able to do hybrid and in-person fundraisers that have been very successful. Let's say that you are an organization in the Bay Area, but because you have found a way to make it in-person and hybrid, you can invite donors and participants that are in New York, Tahiti, Ethiopia, whatever. You can invite people who are from all over the globe to participate. And, it's really funny that we hadn't thought about this before, because if you look at organizations such as PBS, they've always done that. They've always had people who are in that place, but at the same time, they're doing something that is remote. Now, there's one organization that I'm thinking of, and it's called Children Rising. And if you're familiar with Children Rising, one of the things that's so wonderful about them is that they did a hybrid fundraiser. I mentioned this before, where they were able to have the cameras remote for entertainment, for the various funding speeches that they were giving were in a remote location. They had speakers.
I'm on this meeting with this
Hello?
organization.
I'm hearing someone speaking. I don't know who it is. Anyway, so and that person, and that organization, I'm saying, was able to raise over $100,000. Now, the reason they were able to raise $100,000 in one night is because they didn't have to rent all the equipment. If you wanted food, They made it possible for you to order food. The food was brought to your house. They asked you to dress up at your house. They had the entertainment from, and I think it was from Yoshi's. You could sit there. So my husband and I were sitting at our dining room table with our dress up clothes on, with the food that we had ordered, and we put it on nice plates, and we were watching the entertainment, and they were talking to us, we were talking to them, and they raised $100,000. They even had a guest speaker, Rita Moreno, who spoke about raising money. Michelle, you're nodding. I don't know if you were able to participate in that, but they raised so much money. And this money went to tutoring literacy, which is something that I really care about on that night. So consider that as part of your right mix. Next, please. Okay, we want to learn a little bit about you and what you do in terms of your grant writing. Can you run the poll, please, Ebony?
The poll has been launched and it should be in
Okay.
front of the screen or on
Okay.
your phone.
And I'm
There's
just going to
two
walk
questions.
everybody through this to make it a little faster. Question 1, does your organization have a designated person to write and manage proposals and grants? This is single choice, just choose yes or no. And then on question number 2, I want you to click all of the organizations that you have used in your funding mix. For example, are you funded by individual donors? If so, check. Foundation funding, check. Corporate funding, check. Fees for service, do you charge for anything? Check. Federal or municipal government funding, check. Planned giving, check. Fundraisers, check. Or other. Okay. What's our participation, Ebony?
We are at, oh, it's going up, 56%, 60%, 62. They're
Feels like
moving.
Vegas up in here.
They're responding.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Okay, let's close this out and go to the next slide.
In. Do you want to see the
Thank
results?
you, Ebony. Oh, yes, please. Just flash them up for us.
There you go.
Okay. What we see that there 57% do not have a grant writer. So someone is writing those proposals, and maybe that is the person who's here. During this time, we want to possibly give you some ideas and an offer to have some other folks who can help you to get those grants out the door. Okay, we have, 68% have individual donors. That could be because you're faith-based organizations, foundations. We have some corporate funding people, fees for service. Yay, I think that's great. Municipal government, planned giving, fundraisers, and other. So it sounds like the organizations that are here have a pretty solid, pretty healthy mix, a funding mix. That's great. Thank you. Applause to you. So where do we stand from all of this that we've been talking about? Funds are available. The full presentation of your organization must be professional, convincing, and consistent. And nonprofit does not mean non-competitive. So remember that. Next slide, please. So where do we start? This is really, really important. So please hear me. We don't start by making an ask. We don't sit down and just start writing. We start with who we are. We start with what we really care about. We start with what we want to advocate for. And then we start with doing solid programming to make sure that that thing we care about will be impacted in the community by our program and by the funding support that we get for that. Did everybody get that, or did I say it in a complicated way? Okay, I'm assuming that you got it. Okay, so you don't start with the ask. You don't start with writing. You start with advocacy. And you start with some solid programming that is going to make the impact. Okay, next. So I'm going to go through the proposal process really quickly. The first thing you're going to do is develop and document your strategy. which would include your program evaluation and how you're going to make a sustained impact. The next thing you would do is you're going to, and this is before we start writing, right? The next thing you're going to do is you're going to do research on funders, because you're going to start looking at funders that would be a good match for you with your program, with your mission, with your vision, and the impact that you want to make. Why are you developing your strategy and doing your programming and then going right into funding research? Because you don't really want to start looking at the number 3, putting together your clear, dynamic, informative proposal following the guidelines, if guess what, you don't have any guidelines yet. If you haven't figured out who it is that you're thinking about approaching, then you don't really know what guidelines you're supposed to be following. But then you're going to write your proposal and submit it according to that organization's instructions. Next. So the most common grants, and I'm not saying these are not in order, because Michelle has already schooled me on the competitive grants. So Michelle, I did hear you. And I know you're looking at me. My girlfriend be staring me down with those eyes. But anyway, so competitive grants, even though they are not as common as they were, I just want to tell you what they are. They're those grants when you write the grants, you've researched your funder, you write the grant, you submit it, it is reviewed by someone internally, it is scored, and if your score is high enough, then you get the money, right? Then there's invitation only, where you provide some information, it's evaluated, it goes through some kind of internal process, and it is only at that point when you are invited to submit a proposal. Then you have a continuation grant, which is ongoing funding. Sometimes it is as a result of an invitation only grant. Sometimes it's a competitive grant. So you got a grant and the funder might say, yes, I would consider giving you some more money for the next year. Let's continue this for a while. Let's continue this into a period of time. That's a continuation grant. Then there's a pass-through grant. Many of you have seen these. They originate from the federal government, then they're distributed to local governments for allocation. Now, a lot of the grants that came down during COVID were pass-through grants. They came from the federal government. The federal government wanted to do something in various communities to have an impact on the COVID levels that were in those communities. And so they sent some money down to local governments for allocation. And then the money was distributed to organizations that could help impact the issue of COVID in a community. Those were pass-through grants. And then you have formula grants that are non-competitive, where states themselves allocate monies based on a specific activity, something that they need to improve upon. There may be violence, dealing with violence or dealing with literacy or dealing with whatever the state decides we need to make an impact on this, they'll put together formula grants, and those formula grants then will be passed on to communities. Michelle, would you like to say something about this? You can say no, and because I have other opportunities for you to talk.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Or you can say yeah.
I know there are going to be lots of questions, so.
Oh yeah, there are going to be
in.
so many
Yeah.
questions. Next, please. Okay. So I want to give you an example. This little girl is so beautiful. I had to use her picture. But I want to give you an example of how Cisco, CISCO, does their community impact grants. And these are by invitation. So I want to give you an example of how that looks. And this is really interesting because I haven't done this before with a group, but I think you'll find it extremely interesting. Next, please. So the first thing Cisco does is takes you through 3 levels of screening before you get an opportunity to write a grant, before you know that you are allowed to submit a grant to Cisco. But let me say something about this. They get big grants. So I would go down the yellow brick road, dealing with the witches, dealing with the harpies and everything else you have to deal with through all of these levels to get to the Emerald City of $100,000. I would do it. Okay, I would do it. So the program, here's what you have to do. The program must, this is part of the screening. This is what they're saying you need to have in place. Okay. Your program, when I say the program, I'm talking about your program. Your program must address a significant unmet need. It must be innovative and have an impactful approach to the problem. Not just spread something on the problem, but does that program impact the problem? It has to serve at least 65% of the underserved population. You need to monitor the progress and measure impact. Now, when we talk about monitoring progress, they're not just talking about, let's see if we're doing well. Oh, we're doing well. Oh, we're not doing well. No, it means having a system in place that is a loop process that provides continuous improvements in what you are trying to do. Now, I see the sister from My Sister's Keeper nodding her head, and because she's nodding her head, I'm going to give you a little bit more on that. And what that means is you have evaluation on the ground in place. From time to time, you check your programs and whatever your evaluation measures are to make sure that they're on track and they're making the impact that you want to make. If they're not making the impact that you want to make, you make some program adjustments and you say, oh, this didn't work that well, so I need to tweak this so that our impact is greater. When you do that, that is called continuous improvement in evaluation language. And you keep doing that loop until your program is exactly what you want it to be and making the exact impact you want it to make. We'll go to the next bullet, which is what they want you to have strategic partnerships. Why do they want you to have strategic partnerships? Because it's efficient. They don't want to fund you and somebody else, you're doing the same thing, you're not partnering, because what do they want? They want something that's going to be impactful. But if you look at the next bullet, they want something that has the potential to be replicated, scalable, and sustainable. And if everybody is doing the same thing without partnering, it's an inefficient program that they won't want to replicate. That is not scalable and it's not sustainable. So building strategic partnerships means more than it appears to be on the surface. They also want to make sure that your program has the potential to utilize and leverage technology. Really important, even if it's just to protect yourself from what happened to the city of Oakland the other week. Okay, with technology. I'm not even going to say anything about that. It needs to have the potential to leverage strong relationships with Cisco. So they want something out of it. They want you to reach into the community. They want you to know the community, and they want you to help them build strong relationships with Cisco, but they also want you to use Cisco relationships to make your organization stronger as well. And they want to make sure that it possesses outstanding leadership. Outstanding leadership. If you're a yes on all of those for the level 1 screening, next slide, you get to go to level 2. Then there's an eligibility quiz, determining whether the organization and program align with grant requirements. Let me say something about their eligibility quiz. Their eligibility quiz, that's fine, that's good. But if you're doing funding research, you're basically doing your own eligibility quiz. Okay. And what the eligibility quiz is to make sure that what you do aligns with what they do, and that you meet the basic requirements of being a grantee of this organization. Now, when you're doing funding research, that's what you're doing on your own, but they're doing it for you. They're making sure that there aren't any requests that don't align with what their organization does. The next thing they do in level 2 is they give you an information form. And eligible organizations are invited. Now, if they find that you're eligible, you're now invited to submit an information form which describes the proposal concept. And it's an information form. It is not a full proposal. Then you are requested to submit a full proposal. Organizations aligning with the mission, strategic approach, and objectives receive an invitation to submit a full proposal to their online application. Next. Grant writing poll number 2. Did we already? We didn't do this one yet. So that's the way one organization does it. That's Cisco. And that's a whole screening process. And what you end up with at the end is a request for you to submit a proposal, but not until you have checked all those boxes, and those boxes are yes. Grant writing poll number 2, please, Ms. Ebony.
Now launched.
Okay. Now you're going to have to think a little bit about this one, because it's going to require that you remember what you've done in terms of your proposals. So question number 1, how many proposals have you submitted in the last 12 months? Question number 2, what is the single largest grant amount you've received in the last year? And question number 3, what would you need to be more successful in getting grants? What kind of support would you need, or what would you need in your organization to get more grants? Would you need one-on-one grant coaching? Would you need to have a grant writer on staff? Would you need to have a team grant writing training? And by that, I mean having a training like this to happen with a team of individuals who would write grants for you. Okay. Miss Ebony?
We are at 53% and counting.
All right. All right. Okay.
We're at 61%. Do you want me to close it or keep it open?
Is it still going up?
It's still going up.
Okay, then we'll just wait until it kind of levels out a little bit. Take your time. Okay.
Yep, we're 64%, 35
Okay.
participated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right, what are our results? Let's see where we are. Okay, so it looks like we are in the range of up to 20,000. Okay, and let's see, let me go up to the first question. Okay, so some people have not submitted proposals. Some have submitted 1 to 3 and 4 or more with 17%. So our goal then is to get you to a point where you are able and comfortable submitting more proposals, and the point where you are diversifying your mix, your funding mix, and to the point where you are comfortable submitting requests for more money. Okay, and how would that help? It would help with one-on-one grant coaching. having a grant writer on staff, and having a team grant writing training and other. So we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. And let's close this and go to the next slide. Okay, before we get started in actually how to write a proposal, let's see what time we have. We're doing good time, doing well. We want to first do a review of your vision statement and your mission statement. And I am going to ask for a little bit of participation if we can accomplish this with folks who are out there. First, we're going to go through these two slides. We're going to let you know what these things are. You already know. And that is that the vision statement describes how the world would look if you complete your mission. Now, I have a publishing company that is sort of a hybrid because I operate it as a nonprofit, but it's a for-profit. And the vision is that all children be able to read at least at grade level so that they can, and that's the mission. But why is that that's the vision? Why is that the vision? Because I write children's books. Why would you write books that nobody can read? And so it just makes sense. I'm going to show you a vision statement at the bottom. This is an example. Watts of love. Watts of love. That's not a Southern California thing. We're talking about electricity here, okay? Watts of Love is a global solar lighting nonprofit bringing people the power, nice play on words, to raise themselves out of the darkness, that's good, of poverty. That's their vision statement. Let's go to the next one. Next slide. The mission statement. The mission statement has got to have some verbs in them, okay? Verbs like increasing and inspiring and curing and connecting and fighting and growing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It has to have some action words in it. So here's an example. Faith Matters Network catalyzes, circle that, personal and social change by equipping, circle that, community organizers, faith leaders, and activists with, thank you, with resources for connection, spirituality, sustainability, and accompaniment. So we're looking at action words with the mission statement. And so the reason that the mission statement and the vision statement have to be on point, you saw the screening that Cisco does. They're looking for these words. Cisco has their own words. They're looking for love connections with what it is that you do and what it is that they do. Next slide, please. Okay, let's get rid of the thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about, we're actually going to go into the proposal. I have to explain why we do a master proposal. Even though most of, or I should say a lot of the requests are now online, okay? So why would we even write a master proposal? The reason we write a master proposal is because I call it the vault. The vault is the place where you put all of your important information so that as you are writing proposals and different funders ask for different information, you don't have to start from scratch every single time because it's all in the vault, which is called your master proposal. It doesn't mean that you're going to put together a 4-page proposal like we did in the olden days and submit that 4-page proposal. But it does mean that the information that is in the vault is still relevant, even though you are not printing it out, putting it in a folder and sending it by mail to somebody. This is your vault, and this information will continue to be relevant because what's in your vault? Your mission is in your vault. Your vision is in your vault. Your background information and your history of your organization is in your vault. A description of what your programs are, all of this and everything that's in your proposal, that is salient information. So that if people leave your organization, the information about that organization is in writing in your vault, which is called your master proposal. Got it? Okay, that's why we write it. That's why we have this class. Okay, next. Okay, so here's what goes in the master proposal. For those of you who have never written a proposal before, this is what goes in the master proposal, the vault. You're going to have a summary. Some people will ask you for a cover letter. I'm not even going to deal with a cover letter because they'll tell you what they want in there. Is that true, Michelle? If they're a cover letter, you don't even see them anymore.
No, they
Okay.
don't ask for them anymore.
You'll have the summary. The summary you'll still need to have in your vault. The introduction. The introduction, some people call it what? The history. But they want to know about your organization. What have you done? Who's in there? You know, who's part of your organization? You still have the needs statement that you'll need to have. You still need to have the outcomes. The outcomes used to be the what, Michelle? Our outcomes, objectives. We used to call them our objectives.
Yeah.
But now we're calling them the outcomes, and I'm going to show you what the difference is between the outcome and an objective. Doesn't mean that objectives have gone. It just means that you need to know the difference between the two. Then there are methods. Okay, how do you do this? How do you make the impact? Your evaluation, and then your budget and future funding. All these things should be in the master proposal. So when different funders ask you for different information, you go to the master proposal, you pull it out, and you put it in the format that the funder wants. Next. Okay, the introduction. The introduction is about your organization. If you ever ask for an introduction, the thing you need to do is to speak your truth. It helps build the case for your organization's qualifications. It needs to show that you have really strong leadership. You know what you're doing. You've been doing it for a while. You're locked into a mission, a vision, and impact. The introduction, if you are asked for one, is your chance to use your own voice to tell your own story, not just answering questions, but let me just tell you about myself, which is a wonderful opportunity. So you have all that information in there. As you look at applications like Cisco, you may be able to use parts of it. You may not be able to use the whole thing, but there will be parts of it. There will be statements that are in that introduction. There are points that you want to make sure that that funder knows that will be in the introduction. Next, please.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
In the chat, at what point do we write a letter of inquiry?
Well, many organizations aren't asking for those anymore. What just happened? I don't know what's happening. Are we okay? But I'm going to open this for Michelle because one of the things we want to talk about with Michelle is trends. So this is a good place to do that, Michelle.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ebony, because most philanthropic organizations are not requesting letter of inquiries. The only time that you write a letter of inquiry is when you are requested to write a letter of inquiry. So it just depends on the philanthropic sector where you're requesting the resources from. Again, everything is mostly online now. There are some processes that are still paper, but most folks don't like to do the letter of inquiry anymore. Unless, of course, they're still in I don't want to say antiquated system, but the sector is really moving towards more of a trust-based philanthropy approach, as opposed to saying, oh, these are our grantees. We're looking at, folks as our partners because those are the ones that are doing the work on the ground. So really trying to streamline the process to make it easier for everyone. And as you all know, or some of you may not know, the sector changes, I would say, every 8 to 10 years on how they would like to process incoming proposals or applications. So we're at the point now where we're trying to streamline everything and just request a proposal.
Thank you. So the short answer, if I can parrot what Michelle is saying, is that some organizations may ask for them, but it's not something that you would routinely do. Okay. In the introduction, and as I say, this is the vault. In the introduction, you need to be able to show that you are fiscally secure, well managed, that you provide necessary services, that the work that you do and the way that you do it is innovative, that you have a history and you have experienced success, that you know what you're doing, that you are rooted in the community, you're a solid community partner, and more. Now, from a grant writer's point of view, see, and that's what's cool about Michelle and me, because Michelle's a funder, but then we have grant writer tricks as well. Michelle, can you like not listen to this part? So, no, you can put your earbuds back in. There are things that a funder may not directly ask you in their online questions, but there is information that the funder has not asked you, but you want the funder to know anyway, because you feel that it's important about your organization. So you have to craft your answers so that the answers are getting some really salient things about you across. Now, that is not to say that you don't answer the funder's question. You must answer them. You must answer them in a way that is informational, impactful, that heightens interest, but also hits the point of what the funder wants to know. But in addition to doing that, there may be some points that you want to include, and in the way that you answer that question, you can tell a whole lot more about your organization. For example, they may not ask you directly about innovation, but in answering a question, you may say, we are innovators in blah, 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 blah. And that way you're answering the question, but you're also giving some information that we're innovative, okay? Or that we have the respect of the community. And so it's all in the way you write that answer, whether it is, and it's going to be online. Nobody's going to ask you for paper anymore. So get that out of your mind. There's no more paper. I'm the only one in my family that has some paper-based stuff and a file cabinet, which is going to go away. But it's paperless. And so this process is most likely going to be paperless. But that does not mean that these concepts don't hold true as you're writing. Okay, is that clear? Are there hands up? Was that not clear? I can't see what hands are up. So,
Oh yeah, it's me. It's my hand up. Okay.
Oh, I
Questions?
like your hand, girl.
I changed it. I told you.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm fast. So here is 2 questions. One from Laura. If no RFP is issued, can you still send a LOI to introduce your NP and inquire if their programs are matched?
Michelle, you should answer that one.
Yeah, I just put something in the chat. Absolutely not.
Oh.
No.
She answered that quick.
Only because some philanthropic partners do not receive unsolicited information. So you have to be really careful. What are the requirements that the philanthropic partner receive? If they have events, I just put that in the chat. You can go to the event. It's always better to get to know whoever that individual is that's in charge of the particular portfolio you're trying to seek funding after. And introduce yourself and introduce your nonprofit at the event. And then that's a way for them to say, well, let's have a further conversation. Why don't you give me an email so we can set up a connection or something? But absolutely not. Don't I say no because you are wasting your time. You don't have
Yes,
time,
I
money,
agree.
energy to waste.
I agree.
Only if it's an opportunity and an availability. So really, really understand, research the philanthropic partner. You should know if you have 5 organizations that you want to receive funding from, you should know them inside and out. That is your job to do that. If
That's
you have
right.
5 donors that you are thinking about saying, hey, I want these donors to support my organization, whether it be one time or multiple, or you want them to give a bequest, you should have your research done with them. There are many different ways to do that.
Thank you.
I
Thank
have
you.
one more.
Oh,
from
wait,
Lee-
wait, I have to add something to what
Okay.
Michelle said. So if you think back to what we talked about as the steps, there were steps before you actually start writing anything. And research was one of those steps, because you don't know what the funder wants to see until you have done the research on that funder. Once you've done the research on that funder, they will tell you exactly how to approach them, what information they want, what information they don't want. Okay, just as Michelle has said. But the first step is not to strike out writing. The first step is to design your program, then do research and see who are the good partners for you. Now, next month, we will do how to do that research with Michelle Edmond. And Michelle will show you how to identify those partners. Once you have identified those partners, and the way you identify them is when you look at who those organizations are, Michelle will show you how to research exactly what they're interested in, geographically, topically, how they want to be approached. And you go through that process and you identify the organizations that are a match for you. And if they want an LOI or whatever else they want, which is not likely that they would want an LOI, but if they want those things, then you give it to them, but don't give it to anybody who has not asked for it. Okay, all right. Yes, I see your hand is still up there.
There's a second question.
Yes, ma'am.
From Lisa, forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, Magna. She asks, what if you're a new nonprofit? I assume the question is posed based on your last slide.
And what about it? You want
Wants to know
Lisa?
if you're a new nonprofit, how do you go about?
Well, there's different, and Michelle, please jump in. I see that you're muted.
Well, so being a new nonprofit, it's a competitive world. There is still no different way in how you approach philanthropic partners if you're a new nonprofit. You will have, I would say, a little bit of an uphill climb. So I would suggest, if you are a new nonprofit, to really receive some type of funding from the philanthropic sector, or either from individual donors, so that you can say that you have some resources in the bank to start your program, even if it's in-kind donation. So it's important to keep track of everything, because although, say for instance, a congregation or a business may be providing you space for free, that is considered part of your budget. So track everything, because philanthropic partners really want to know, even if you're a new nonprofit, like, how did you get started? Who's supporting you? So that a lot of times they don't want to be the first ones in. At the San Francisco Foundation, we actually are okay with being the first ones in, because we think, that we fund innovative and different processes and everything. Like, we were one of the first ones in when KQED wanted to come to the San Francisco Bay Area, and look at what happened with that. So there are many different things, many different organizations that we've been the first ones in. We are celebrating our 75th anniversary. So I'm going to drop in our website so that you can see how being the first ones in was a start. One thing, we're all in on housing right now. And so that particular situation started way back in the 40s, when Willie Mays came into San Francisco and was not allowed to purchase a home because he was a Black man. So there are many different ways that you can start that process, even if you're a nonprofit. One thing I want to say is you just need to have your documentation together. We're probably going to go over this a little bit later, but around the SMARTY goals.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we, because I've worked with so many nonprofits and faith-based organizations and others, really appreciate the San Francisco Foundation. And I'm not just saying that because Michelle is there, but who would have thought about even funding and launching a faiths practice, which would have allowed occur to get funding for a model built on faith, which would allow us to work with faith-based organizations. It was the San Francisco Foundation, and they were running with this concept of funding faiths when so many other foundations were running away from faith-based organizations. Even when you do your research, and I know that Michelle's going to tell you, Michelle Edmond is going to tell you this, but one of the things you don't do is put in religious organization, because funders will run. You have to talk about the work that you're doing, like in literacy or in homelessness or whatever, but they don't want to fund a religious organization. The San Francisco Foundation has never run from that. And that's why we've been able to work with them in doing the good work that they do and the good work that Occur does. Next, please.
One more question, if you have time.
Uh-huh.
So we have a question in the chat from, sorry, I lost it, right? From Tanya Andrews.
Hi, Tanya.
I am a large child care home transitioning to a nonprofit center with STEAM, I think it's STEM. I think it's STEAM or STEM. College
STEAM
prep.
has arts and
STEAM
is
is okay. I learned something new just now with STEAM and college prep programs. Can I use successes from my current program in the funding proposal?
Michelle?
Yeah, I dropped something in the chat. Absolutely, you can. You would have to couch it as this is a partner, that you are starting this new nonprofit and that you have been in partnership with the for-profit, or you guys are in partnership as a basis that you actually have a track record, or you're partnering with an organization that has a track record, although you're starting a new nonprofit. That would be my suggestion, because they're two separate organizations. You want to make sure that that the reader understands that they're two separate organizations, so there's no confusion. So the cross-fertilization has to be extremely careful and sensitive, because they are two organizations. You never want a funding partner to think that, well, actually they're moving to nonprofit so that they can receive this type of funding. So you just have to be very clear and transparent with that.
Did that answer your question, Tanya?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so there's something that I just personally need to say, and that is that if you're going to be approaching funders, you need to really make sure that you have your act together when it comes to the various platforms that you communicate on. So when we're talking about your website and, you use Instagram, you tweet and all of these other things, people Yelp you and you do something TikTok that's cute or whatever, just make sure that everything you do on those platforms aligns with who you say you are. I can't say that enough, because, excuse me, the funders don't just listen to who you say you are or read about who you say you are. They're going to look and see who you are in your presence out in the world. And don't be naive to think that they're not looking at the things that you tweet, and they're not looking at, how have you managed your website? How do you communicate with people in the community? Can people use your website to even access you? Can they find out about you on your website? If you use Instagram, is it representing you well? Is it selective in what you're doing? This is really, really important. And I would say that this representation is as important as what it is that you write about yourself, because when you get to the end of that funding process, then somebody's going to be checking that out. So let's be aware of that. Next slide. Okay. So in writing this, the first thing we want to do is we want to build the case, the need statement. How do we arrive at a need statement? Okay, what is the problem in the community? So let's say a problem in the community that we have is that there are a lot of people that are unhoused. What is the magnitude of the problem? We have a lot of statistics and a lot of information giving us information about the magnitude of this problem. Who is affected? There are many, many families that are affected, individuals are affected. That's when this problem becomes a need. It goes from a problem statement to a need statement when there are human beings that we care about or others that we care about that actually are experiencing this problem. The need is that people need a place to live and to call home. That's the need. That is different from the problem being that we have a lot of unhoused in the community. Do you see the distinction? And you need hard evidence. There needs to be research. There need to be statistics. Statistics and hard evidence speak louder than words. Soft data, on the other hand, is important, but not as important in many instances as the hard evidence, the data. The soft data includes quotes and anecdotes and informal information. And I'm looking out over the bay and here's what I see. I see a lot of sludge coming out over the water, da, 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 da. That's informal information. But if you say that there are tons and tons of trash floating in the bay and that people are getting sick and that there is a need to clean this up because people are getting sick, this is hard evidence, hard data, and it has a different weight to it. Next, please. The problem statement then attracts funders when you show that there is a need that affects real people in the community. You need to talk about who specifically these people are who have the need. Can you document this in a significant, is it significant? Is it unmet? And unmet meaning is the need unmet? And is this among your targeted population? Next. So now we're going to go to goals, outcomes, and objectives. This was a quiz question. A goal, a program goal, is a broad general statement that is not usually in measurable terms, which establishes the direction of a program. It is our goal to make sure that children read, that children in Oakland read. What children? How many? Where? We don't have to say because it's a goal. Next slide, please. A goal is your North Star. Good timing, Shy. And then you went too fast past it, but it's okay. But your goal is your North Star. It's the thing that you are working toward. That's why you have a goal. That's why the goal doesn't have to really have any numbers attached to it. Objectives, on the other hand, are sub-goals. Now, these have to be specific measurements. Why? Because objectives are like baby steps getting you to the goal, okay? They're baby steps getting you to the goal, and you need to be able to measure the baby steps. In the old days, my mom used to say, oh, we're taking one step forward and two steps back. Okay. What you're trying to do is to measure what those step forwards are. What are the specific steps forward? So they are measurable, and they are steps along the way of getting to your goal. Your goal might be so broad that you may be working toward it forever, but your objectives are time specific. They are measurable. They are more short term than a goal, and they are achievable. The goal may not be altogether achievable even in your lifetime, but the objectives will be. Next, please. Okay, now this is interesting. I didn't know this till I figured it out. A goal, an outcome, is an objective as well. An outcome is an objective where it is expected to end at the end of your project period. So outcomes reflect measurements of what is the expected result, that should be result, at the end of your project period. They're all objectives, but an outcome happens, it is succinct, and it ends, and you reach it at the end of your project period. So that's why funders will say, what is the outcome of your project? It's the outcome of your project because that result needs to be there. The objectives need to be put forward in such a way that you are reaching that outcome by the end of that project period. You want to see some results. Okay, next. This is very familiar to those of you who have taken this class before. So our outcomes, like objectives of yesteryear, but your outcome is what happens at the end of your project period, your funding period, okay? It needs to be specific. And when we say specific, we mean, okay, well, who's being impacted by this? Like, what kids, for example, are being impacted by this? And it has to be measurable. It has to be attainable, okay? It has to be relevant. Why is this important to anybody? And it needs to be time-based. This is going to happen in a particular period of time. Next slide. Okay, so this is the part where you get to participate. Okay, so I'm going to give you a problem. 50% of fifth graders in this school read at the third grade level. That's a problem. The need is all fifth graders at the ABC school need to be able to read at least their fifth grade level. There's a problem, but now we have a need. There's a problem. Hey, let's look at that. That's a problem. But a need, these kids need to be able to read at grade level. That's a need. Now, would anyone like to take the next 5 minutes to come up with, now this is your problem, your need now, right? I want you to write a goal for this, a broad general statement, okay, about these fifth graders not reading. And I want you to write an objective that reflects measurements of what is expected at the end of the program period. The objective is called the outcome because it's at the end of the program period. All right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to play with that. Michelle, I'm going to let you play with it too. I'm gonna because you're going to give us the answer. She's not smiling at me anymore. Okay, thumbs up. Was that a thumbs up? Okay. I want those earrings, Michelle. Okay.
Okay, you got them.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you're so wonderful. I'm going to stop my video because I'm drinking coffee and not water, and I need to go get some water. You don't have to fill out the form online. I'm going to ask you to write it on a piece of paper and just write it on a piece of paper, and then I'm going to ask you to read it to us. So don't deal with the technology of it all.
We have a question.
Yes.
The question in the chat from Ms. Fowles. I believe I pronounced your last name correct, your name correctly. Are you using the term project as an annual or semi-annual piece of a larger or larger standing program to be sustained?
I don't think you should focus on program. I mean, on whether it's a program or a project. Focus on the funding period for whatever it is that you're getting funding for. The Betty, let's see. I'm not sure what's happening with Betty's screen because it's showing on mine, Shy. Shy.
You're muted, Shy.
I'm not sure how to stop that, but I'm trying to see if I can.
Are you doing that?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk to Ms. Fowles because I'm not sure I understand the answer. Can you unmute yourself? Is Ms. Fowles there? Okay. But we're just talking about the funding period for whatever it is you're getting funding for. Omawali, are you there? Unmute yourself. Okay. I hope that answers your question. All right. Is everybody finished with that? I'm going to ask Betty Blackmore G. Hi, Betty.
Hi, I'm sorry. I was having problems with the technology.
Oh, no. Don't worry about the technology. Just give me your answer. We just want to hear you.
Okay. So it said all fifth graders at ABC school needs to be able to read. And anyway, my broad general statement, I never finished it though, because I was messing with this. But I was thinking to help build self-esteem, building self-esteem and believing that, just to ensure that they can do this.
Okay.
And just make it fun.
Okay.
Just believing that they can.
Okay. Now that's good, but it doesn't address how you're going to get them to actually do the process of reading or getting to the literacy issue. The way you do your program, helping them to have self-esteem, that makes sense. But what are you going to do to actually help them to understand what those ABCs are and understanding how those letters sound and getting to all those levels of literacy? What's your program goal? Michelle, can you help her with that?
Sure. So your program goal, Betty, think about it's the fifth graders in the school. So you would want to, it would have to be a general statement. It doesn't have to be measurable. Like, so basically you want to improve the reading level of the fifth graders at the school. That would be, to me, that would be the goal without any type of measurement.
Okay.
So you could just be a simple statement of to improve the reading level of the fifth graders, at ABC school.
Okay. Let's ask Daryl if he wants to share his program goal. Daryl?
Yeah, this is very near and dear to my heart, both because I participated in reading incentives as a kid, and my wife and I helped lead this when our kids were at this age in school. So I just wanted to read my best effort at that.
Please.
I put it in the chat. It's program goal. ABC school has established reading incentive program to encourage students to increase reading, both at school and more importantly at home. We have launched a parent outreach effort to engage the parents in supporting the reading efforts. Finally, we have incorporated reading coaches and literacy development at the school to help students who struggle with reading proficiency.
Okay,
And then on the outcome,
wait a minute,
I
let's
put-
stop, wait, stop
Go
for a
ahead, go ahead,
second,
yeah.
let's stop for a second.
Yep.
Now, what Michelle just said was the goal, getting them to read, helping them to read. What you just said was the methodology, how to help them to read.
Yeah,
Right.
yours is more of a strategy, Daryl. That's
right, it was, right.
Yeah.
Right. Now what we need, so we have those two, we're going to need the three. We're going to need all three. Who has the outcome for us?
I was about to share also the brief outcome I put to go
Okay,
with that.
let's hear your outcome.
90% of students and families participate in the reading incentive program with a 2-year performance of 75% of fifth graders are reading at fifth grade level.
Okay, what do you think of that, Michelle? If someone brought that to you as the outcome.
It's a little bit complex. I would want to see, I like the 90% of the students. However, I don't know what the 90% of the students is, so I don't have a baseline. So I would need a baseline if you were going to say 90% of the students. I also want to say that the sector sometimes, I would stay away from numbers. But if you have concrete numbers, I would do the concrete numbers. Because when you're saying 90%, is that 90% of 10? Is it 90% of 100? Is it 90% of 5,000? I have no idea. And so
Well, I was basing it on the problem statement, which said that only half of the students are at grade level.
yeah,
So
but what
basically,
is
I was
half?
saying that 90%.
What is
of the
half?
students-
So
I don't
when-
know what the numbers is. I'm just,
yeah, so you always have to remember whenever you're writing anything, your outcomes, your program goal. Well, your program goal can be very general, but your outcomes or your strategies, you always have to remember that the reader has no idea. You have to go in reading, thinking that the reader has no idea of what your program goals are, how many people are in your program. They have no idea. All they are reading is what you're giving them. And so you have to have a quantification if you're going to use percentages.
Right. Okay, so let's go to Shai. Can you take us to slide 37? And then I'm going to ask you to come back to this slide. Can you click over to slide 37? And I have these letters on this screen. I don't know how that's there. Okay, so Shai, I want you to get rid of those letters that are on our slides. If you
I'm
can.
not seeing this. Okay. Oh,
We're all seeing it. So if you can find out. But anyway,
Oh.
so here we go. So the problem is, let me just move this out of the way. So the problem statement would be half of the fifth graders at Jackson Franklin Elementary School the fifth graders read at third grade level. There is a need. According to the XXX test scores, 100 of the 200 fifth graders at J. Franklin Elementary School need to increase literacy to the fifth grade level in order to learn the grade level materials. The goal is to increase the reading skills of JF School fifth graders who are reading at the third grade level. The outcome would be 90% of the 100 JF School fifth graders who read at the third grade level, which would be 90 students, will increase their reading skills by 2 grade levels as measured by XXX test within 6 months, which would be June, enabling them to learn grade level lessons / materials. Does everybody get that? Michelle, is that comfortable for you?
No, yeah, that's comfortable for me. As you have you've done the SMART, but now they've included an I and an E.
Uh-huh.
which means inclusive and equitable.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that
Where
works.
is this I and the E? What do you say?
So it's Smart Goes, but now the trend is Smarty Goes.
Oh,
So
Smarty Goes. Okay.
yeah, Smarty
I
Goes.
did not know that. We're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing, remember I was telling you, Daryl, I was talking about the methodology.
Yep.
So the method with this particular one would be to establish intensive reading program. And that's kind of parroting what you said. Based on the evidence-based ABC learning program, utilize the excellence reading program, small group coaching, reading clubs, etc.
Yeah, I was thinking of this strategy-wise, but I just didn't have this language in front of me.
Right. So now, but what I want to show to everybody is what the problem looks like, what the need looks like. Okay, because now we're getting more specific with who these students are. What the goal looks like, not measurable, general terms. What the outcome looks like, very, very specific. Okay. And then what the methodology is to arrive at that. Okay.
Is methodology synonymous with strategy? That's
Yes.
basically. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so there's Tanya. Tanya, talk to us.
Okay, so first of all, I wish I'd had this information a few years ago when I ran a summer academic program, because I actually did something like this that was extremely successful. And one of the things I did was to use summer work students from WorkNet program out here in Stockton to do a one-on-one with kids. So I did the pre and post testing. I used the Slauson reading test. And so our kids were able to improve their math and reading skills.
Good for you.
1 to 2 grade levels in a 9-week program.
Wow.
So having this now, maybe I can go back and revisit that program and get some funding for it because I paid for it myself.
Yeah, because now you just kind of know the language. And that's the thing that's important about learning things like this, is that you learn the language. You learn the language. So when you're speaking to funders, you're speaking their language. Before we go to the person on the phone, Michelle, tell us, what is the IE? I didn't know about the IE and the SMART outcomes.
Yeah, so
Everybody listen up. I had no idea about this.
This is something new that I think it's been probably the last 3 years we've been using Smarty Goals, and really it just to include the I and the E, which means that your goals should be inclusive, and then it should be equitable, because as we are moving through this new normal that we have, that a lot of things are not equitable. There are institutional systemic systems that do not support communities of color, etc. And then it just runs the gamut. So the IE was included to be part of the SMART goals. So it's Smarty Goals: strategic, measurable, achievable or ambitious, realistic, time-bound, inclusive, and equitable.
Okay, thank you. We all learned something today. I like that. Keep it moving. We have someone on the phone with their hand up.
That's Rosa.
And I see something. Please don't write anything.
Hi.
Please don't write anything. Okay, thank you. Okay, hi, Rosa. Is that Rosa?
Hi.
Hi, Rosa. We're listening.
Okay. This is very similar to what I have just completed at a public school in Oakland. And about 95% of the 5th graders at this elementary school were reading at 2nd and 3rd grade level. 2 of the students had IEPs. And according to the last standardized test they were given over a year ago, they were all reading at the 2nd or 3rd grade level. Our goal was to increase their reading skills in 40 hours or less, up to and beyond grade level. The method that we used was some books that I wrote, Read in 40 Hours or Less. They are phonics workbooks, and each of the students had one. And we worked for 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week for about 4, almost 5 weeks. And the outcome was 70% of them did surpass their grade level. I'm sorry, 70% did surpass their grade level. And they completed the final non-standardized exam that I gave them, which is in one of my workbooks.
Okay, well, thank you very much for sharing that. I'm going to have to rush forward because we got a lot of information to cover, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. Shai, can you go back to the slide that we were on? Okay, so the methods, which we already talked about, will explain how you're going to achieve, and we've been calling that the strategy as well. You start with an overview of what you're going to do. You explain why you're using these methods, and then you go into detail. And when I say go into detail, I mean really go into detail, because some of the things that you've been doing on a daily basis, you may take for granted. But when we're looking at someone who's asking you about your methodology, you need to explain to them exactly what it is that you did and how. You also need to describe the target population and the major components of every single activity that you're doing. Also, you have to state your outcomes correctly, as we just went over. Describe overall timeline, align with the budget, and the tasks that are included in this process. So this is how you're going to achieve your outcomes, your methods. But also, one thing that's interesting about methods is that the methods can also be part of your continuous improvement process, which means that when you're talking about how you did it and you're talking about what steps you made, you're going to do a little check on that to make sure that you're reaching your benchmarks. If you are not reaching your benchmarks, you can change your methods so that you are improving your results along the way, and that is called continuous improvement. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the whole issue of evaluation. Evaluation is something that you consider at the very beginning of program design. How you're going to evaluate this thing. It is not, and the problem that I see a lot of nonprofit organizations have is that they begin to think about evaluation after the program has been running for a while, and okay, now let's evaluate it. But there's nothing in place to help you evaluate it. Evaluation needs to be interwoven in all of your processes in your program at every step of the way. So it should be at the beginning with the design, in the middle there should be some evaluation processes, and you really need to do evaluation throughout. And again, that goes with continuous improvement. Okay. Now, evaluation is very expensive. Michelle, there are funders who fund evaluation, correct?
That is correct. Your current funder can also fund your evaluation. If you have a conversation with them about that, they can also put resources in your current budget for the evaluation. But there are funders that do fund evaluation specifically.
I like the idea of your current funder, because your current funder has already made an investment in you. And so to be able to put in place the evaluation. Now, some of the evaluation that you can put in place yourself as a nonprofit is many evaluations that don't cost a lot of money. But Michelle, I'm going to ask you about levels of evaluation in just a second. So your evaluation components that you can use: observations, okay, watching processes and seeing how it's going, and then making observation notes, comparing those observation notes and seeing if your observations at the beginning of a process are improving over time. Journals, photos. I worked with a project with the public health department well, where they were teaching young people to identify food deserts. And they wanted the kids to be aware of what food deserts were, where those food deserts were, whether they didn't have access to healthy fruits and vegetables, and all different types of foods. And so, and Berkeley was one of those areas that did a really good job at it. They had a very innovative, a process that was very innovative at the time, where they gave the kids cameras, disposable cameras at the time, and they did photo journals of what they saw in their communities. And the photographs that those kids showed of the food deserts and the sorts of things that they saw in their communities had such an impact on funders that those photojournals helped the organization to get more funding because they were so impactful. Another of the subjective and qualitative forms of evaluation are conversations with focus groups. Talk to people and document what they're saying. Because if this is about them, then it needs to include them. There's a saying in the community, nothing about me without me. And so evaluation, but also program design, should involve a focus group component so that the people who are being impacted can be a part of the design, but they also can let you know whether you're hitting the mark. Okay, so also in the evaluation, financial return on investment in your target and your budget analyses can also tell you, can evaluate whether the program is being successful. Are you throwing your funds at it? Or is it taking fewer and fewer funds to actually make an impact? And then pre-test and post-test, we did some of that for educational or training outcomes. We want to know if when we were talking to you, even during this process, if your pre-test results are going to be different, if your post-test results are going to be different than your pre-test results. And then performance testing, placement tests, number of contacts, scores, graduations, etc. So those are performance, and then others. And you probably have some other forms of evaluation components that you are using right now. Michelle, can you tell us some of the maybe more sophisticated forms of evaluation that funders would be willing to pay? She's smiling. Did I throw you a curvey?
No, you didn't throw me a
smarty
curvy. I have some feelings on evaluation, so
Yeah, tell us, because we want to know your opinions too.
Yeah, I'm one of the folks who feel like evaluation should really be done by the folks who are being evaluated. If you are evaluating a community of color, the evaluators should be individuals of color. Most evaluation firms that folks use now are not communities of color. There are some that we're moving to and that have been established. So what an evaluation really is I'm going to put it like this. You know, I want to lose weight because I've gained some weight during the pandemic.
No, you didn't. Go ahead.
So, you know, so for me to figure this out, I have to figure out a plan that I want to use. I have to do a pre-visit, a pre-weight. I also have to submit to the plan that I've subjected myself to, and then I have to track my progress. And then at the end of my progress, I have to document how much weight I've lost in the time that I've lost it. And then the long-term evaluation would be, how long have I kept the weight off? So that when you think of an evaluation, think of it in terms of something that you have experienced. It's basically a it's a performance or an examination of how relevant and how well your program is running based on your mission, your program goal, your outcomes, and what success looks like. And so there's so many different ways that you can do the evaluation. If your organization does not have the resources to do what we would call a formal evaluation, where you actually have evaluators come out, talk to the program staff, then talk to your clients or your partners, do this really great documentation with pictures, and now everybody loves video. then there are different ways to do it. As Carmen suggested, that there was a program that actually gave students video cameras to document their food desert. So there are many ways to do the evaluation. Most funders do like a formal evaluation. However, when I tell people that when my boss says we really need an evaluation, I say, well, we really have to pay for the evaluation if we
Thank you.
evaluation. So but evaluation is something that you should do informally all the time or formally. So I feel like we need to set the standard and change the sector around how evaluations are done and who does the evaluation and which evaluation is valid, by creating ways for us to really evaluate our own work and our own programs also, if we
That's
don't
right.
have the resources, because they can cost thousands of dollars up to the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes, I agree with everything that you said. And I like the concept and agree that if you're going to be evaluating a community, the community should be part of that process. Because not only can they cost a lot of money, if they see something from a different perspective, if they're seeing something as not impactful, but the community sees it as impactful, then it can cost the community. And so I think the community should be able to, or at least the evaluator should work with the community to make sure to see what they see from their perspective as well, because it is about them. I agree with you. Next slide, please. Some evaluation tips. Design it at the beginning of the program. And determine whether the outcomes were met. Michelle has basically said all of this. Feedback from the target group. You jumped the gun on me. Description of the data collection methods and analyses, description of how results were reported, describe how the results will be used to inform or improve programs. And I think that's really important when you're working with communities. They don't want to be evaluated just to be evaluated, but they want to be they don't mind being evaluated if they know that when you get these results, it's going to improve their lives. It has to be real. And this is the feedback loop of continuous improvement. Next. Okay, so the budget has to tie to the program, plan the budget along with it. This is particularly important when you're looking at your methodology. Your methodology will probably cost you some money. So go through your methodology and look at what this is going to cost. Include all of the costs. Who's going to be involved in your program? For example, who your instructors are, who your tutors are, how much the materials are going to be, how much it's going to cost for the site. A budget narrative may be needed to explain some of those line items. And then future funding. Future funding, most of you got right, is explaining how you plan on keeping this funded so that you will have the program long enough to see some impact in the community. Next slide. Summary. You don't really need this that much anymore, but I always like to have it in the vault just in case. But it's an executive summary of what's in the master proposal. And so it's written last. And the cover letter, we've already talked about that, but with the technology, you probably won't see a lot of cover letters, and you probably won't see, maybe you'll see executive summaries, but things have changed so much with the online proposal writing. Next. Okay, so when you write this down, now you're ready to write. You're finally ready to write, okay? Now that you're ready to write, here are some of the things that you want to avoid doing. Okay, these are traps. Your program does not match the grantor's funding interest. There's nothing worse than having a grantor say, why did they submit this to us? We don't even do this. You didn't follow the grantor's direction. The summary or your background isn't compelling or complete. Your outcomes and objectives, not clear or measurable. Your outcomes, objectives, not related to the problem or the need. Your introduction does not, and this is really important, it doesn't establish organizational competencies. And let me just say that another way. What you've said about yourself doesn't establish the fact that you have any skills or abilities to actually do this kind of program, okay? And that's another way of saying your organizational competencies are not established. You didn't establish your credibility. Your history doesn't reflect a commitment to doing the work represented. In the old days, what used to happen, and I'm sure nothing like this is happening now, but people used to see that there was a big old grant out there, so they would just go for it and had no history of ever doing this kind of work. You have to establish that you have a history that reflects a commitment and competency to do the kind of work you're requesting funding for. Okay, next, please. Other problems that you have to watch out for: disconnected methodologies. I'm doing this over here, I'm doing that over there. No, this needs to be linear. Your reasoning needs to follow in your methodologies, your strategies. Your evaluation needs to be conclusive. Inefficiencies. One of the things that is seen as an inefficiency is when you have opportunities to work with collaborations and partnerships to leverage resources and you don't do that. That's inefficient from the perspective of the funder. Unrealistic budgets. I want to give you a particular caution here, and that is because sometimes organizations who are not used to having a lot of money, but actually making it work anyhow, and faith-based organizations are organizations that do that, because faith-based organizations can do a whole lot with a little bit of money. But let me, please hear me, please hear me. I would jump up and down if it was warm enough in this room to do that. But when you ask for money, ask for enough money. There's nothing worse than asking for too little money, but saying you're going to do all this stuff. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is propose correctly, plan correctly, put the right budget in place. And then they're not skittish about money. Foundations have money. Ask them for the money that you need to make the impact. Why? Because the foundation wants to make that impact. Then you have, or you can have an unsubstantiated need statement. Remember, we said that you need to have that documented, that you have to have some documentation that this is really a need. And the other thing is, don't write a cold document. Make sure that this document reflects your passion in this work. This is something you really care about, or you wouldn't be doing it for 20 years. I care about technical assistance and capacity building for nonprofit and faith organizations. I wouldn't be doing it for 20 years. That's a long time, okay? So make sure that it shows your passion. Next, please. Okay, here comes your post-test. I hope you learned everything you were supposed to learn today from Teacher Michelle and Teacher Carmen. Okay, all right, Miss Ebony.
Launched.
Launch it, girl. And we're going to take the same test you took before.
It's open.
Okay, all right. Everybody, I want you to get started on your test. It is always best to provide a funder with a long format proposal with pictures of your clients to make sure they are impressed. True or false? A goal must be measurable. True or false? Goals and objectives are the same thing. True or false? You don't need to worry about evaluation until the end of your program. True or false? It's important to provide data to support your description of program needs. True or false? A proposal summary should be written before the rest of the proposal. True or false? The largest source of revenues for nonprofits is foundations. True or false? Future funding refers to agencies' strategies for developing additional funding to sustain the program. True or false? The organization's mission is an important part of program planning. True or false? A problem and a need are the same thing. True or false? Okay, how are we doing, Miss Ebony?
We are at 31%, 33, 40. It's moving.
Okay, keep it moving, everybody. Keep it moving. All right.
We do have, I think, 2 questions.
Okay.
If y'all want
As long
to.
as they're quick, we can take it because I know everybody wants to go and I want to hear from Michelle. I'm sorry, I'm cold. It's freezing.
So one question in the chat from it. Oh, where did it go? Where did my little question go? Miss Fowles.
Omawali,
Yep, Miss Omawali.
where are you, Omawali? Hi.
You want to ask your question real quick?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to know if there are any specific budget techniques that we should use for analyzing our particular projects or programs. And the other question that I had was the use of the term projects versus programs.
What's the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference between those 2 terms? But I'm
Okay.
really interested in that budget analysis thing because there's in economics, they teach you a whole bunch of different ways to analyze a budget. And I was just wondering, what's the easiest way? Should we do something simple or should we do one of those complicated, vertical or horizontal and ratios and all that stuff?
Okay, so no, we're not talking about ratios for sure.
Yeah, okay.
But the thing that I am going to ask is if you can hold those questions because we're going to have a Q&A with Michelle.
So we're at 77%.
Okay, how much?
77%.
Oh, excellent. So
79.
can I have that? You can close it? And let's just look at, we'll get the full results later, but I want to make sure. Okay, so a proposal summary should be written before the rest of the proposal. That is false. It is written last. Okay. The largest source of revenues for nonprofits is foundations. That is false. It is individuals.
Yeah.
Future funding refers to agency strategies for developing additional funding to sustain. That's got it right. It's true. Everybody got that right. The organization's mission is an important part of program planning. Got it right. It's true. A problem and a need are the same thing. It is false. 74% of you got it right. Did I think I didn't start at the top. Is that true, Ebony?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. It is always best to provide a funder with a long format proposal of pictures. That is false. 89% of you got that correct. Perfect. A goal must be measurable. True or false? No.
False.
A goal is general.
Right.
Okay. Goals and objectives are the same thing. False.
Nope.
Absolutely. They are not the same thing. You don't need money to worry about evaluation until the end of the program. That's false. Okay, so we went through the rest of this, right? Okay. It is important to provide data to support your description of program needs. That is true. Okay, and we started with that proposal summary. So thank you very much. And I will be getting that side by side from you later, Ebony. How we did with the pre and post test. Next slide, please. Michelle, do you like this picture of you?
I do. It's very interesting.
This is how you'll look when you're my age. So you have big gray fur.
No, I have the fountain of youth. I have lots of serums that Ken doesn't understand that I put on every night. So
okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to take, let's see, we're going to take, Michelle is here. This training runs, you can leave, of course, whenever you're ready, but we wanted to provide you with as much training and as much information as we could. We're going to take the next 15 minutes to take some questions, or for Michelle to answer some questions. But I don't want you to leave right after that, because we also want to let you know about the next training. We need you to complete the evaluation. Would you like to pop up, Shai? Would you like to pop the evaluation up before we do the Q&A real fast?
That'd be great. Yeah, you should.
Let's do that. Let's pop the evaluation up, Shai.
It's here. It's launched.
Okay, there's the evaluation. Let's just do this first because we don't want to lose this, okay? So just go ahead and finish that quickly, and then we'll go to Michelle's Q&A. And Ebony, let me know when we have about 70%.
Perfect. Will do.
Okay. So everybody who's finished already, I think I'm going to make myself some soup now. Michelle, you can come over and have some soup.
Okay, I'm coming.
And we can watch Le Pont on Netflix.
Okay.
If you haven't seen Le Pont, it looks like Lupin. Watch it. It is fantastic, amazing. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but that's a recommendation of what to do this weekend. Stay inside, drink something warm, watch something good, read your Bible. Are we finished?
We are at 73. So yes, I'm ending the poll now. You want me to end
Just
it?
keep it, yeah, keep it going and get as many as we can get on the evaluation.
So we're at 33 of 41 thus far.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. So is it still moving or no?
It is still moving. We're at 84%, 33.
Wow.
And give it a second. Nothing else is happening. I can close it.
Okay, thank you. And you could close that out. And then I would like to, I'm not sure. Thank you. Let's just go down to take that off, and let's go down. Let's start with Michelle. And we want to Ebony, I want you to manage this. And in terms of people who have their hand, oh, Daryl McMillan.
Daryl's up.
Let's start with Daryl. We're only going to do this for 15 minutes, so we're going to do short answers and short questions, okay? Because we want as many people as possible to be able to access Michelle, our funder. Daryl?
Yeah, I have a quick one. Recently, just this last week, actually, we had a chance to connect with a foundation that gives to religious giving. And they are very interested in our network of grantees that we've been working with you, Michelle, in holding a forum to kind of educate this foundation.
Okay, let's make it happen. When you want to do it, call me.
So I wanted to know if you guys would be interested in partnering with us to meet these foundations to educate them. Yes.
Absolutely. We will definitely partner with you. Yeah, we'll bring resources. Call me so we can set it up.
And
Daryl, thank you.
Daryl, we would like to partner also with a model built on faith. So
absolutely. I actually had mentioned wanting you guys to be there.
Let me know too. Don't leave the little kids out.
Absolutely. So great. Thank you both.
Okay. Who else has their hand up? Anybody else?
No more hands are up. I'm checking the chat to see if anyone have posed a question in the chat, and no questions at all.
All right. It sounds like Michelle, we did a good job.
Yay.
Oh, wait, I have one question. Sorry.
Okay.
And it's starting to rain behind me. I'm not sure if you can hear it now. From Miss Magna, La Magna. Here we go. Do you have any advice for unsexy, in quotes, nonprofits?
And what would that be, Miss Magna?
Yeah, what is unsexy? I'm confused.
Lisa, would you like to elaborate?
Hi, yes. So we work with at-risk elders in Alameda County, and typically they are living in very unhealthy situations, or they're living on the streets. It's not like some really uplifting story for people. We find, people generally love, good photographs and young children, and we're presenting with something I feel it's really hard to do fundraising for, especially on the individual level. And I'm just curious about just your opinions and perspectives on that and how to tell those stories. It's not directly related to grant making and grant funding, but the idea of being able to tell stories with photographs is really hard when you're working with people who are so vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. But some of those people who are vulnerable, some of those community members, I'm sure that one or two would be willing to do a small video, or you can take quotes from them and do a blog, or as my kids say, they like to vlog now. You can blog. But I understand the sensitivity about pictures. Also, do you have a newsletter with your organization? That's another way where you can share that information and use quotes from those individuals, and just really concentrate, because you cannot do pictures, really concentrate on the sources, the resources you provide and the services you provide, and really how it's assisting those individuals to sustain themselves. So, if you're not there to provide the resources, whether it be mental health, food insecurity, or whatever you provide, then these individuals would probably be, end up in the hospital, or they may be in a different type of situation. So you have to couch it in a way where what you're providing, how your provisions are assisting those individuals and those community members, if you cannot take pictures.
And Lisa, you cannot take pictures, not even like from behind or anything?
It's we often feel that, I can't say it, our case managers feel like it's invasive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying, and Michelle, I appreciate, I like the idea of, using quotes in our newsletters and telling the story in different ways.
Let me just say, okay, one of my areas of expertise is marketing. And I think that it's really important that your perspective changes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're working in an arena like this, it can be very heavy, but the perspective needs to change to to what you're doing right, and how you're making a difference, and how you're bringing hope.
That's so true. Thank you.
And I look at, my husband and I give to St. Jude's, and if St. Jude's were just the pictures of those kids, or just the stories of those kids, then it would be very difficult for St. Jude's to raise money. But the way they have marketed is they've talked about, you think this is hopeless, but because of what we do, we have changed futures for people. So if in fact your organization is changing situations, is changing levels of hope, is changing futures, then that's what you need to focus on. And what you're saying to funders and others is, be a part of this. Make a difference here for people who have made a difference for so many other people for so long. It's their turn for you to support.
Okay,
them.
Carmen, you said short.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I was getting into it. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, sis. What's next?
So I want to remind folks, there's the Taproot Foundation that provides volunteer resources for retired individuals. So definitely
nice.
check them out. If you are looking for a volunteer to help with any marketing or any type of thing, there's Taproot Foundation. There are other resources.
What's it called? Can you spell that, Michelle?
Taproot.
Taproot.
Yes.
Taproot organization.
Yeah.
Also, this year we're going to be doing a session on finding volunteers to help you.
Right.
So next question. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's go to the next slide. Okay. The only limit to your impact is your imagination and commitment. And the next slide. Okay. And next slide. Okay. This is the one I wanted to get to. So go to the Model Built on Faith website and look at our next training, which is part 2 of this, which is funding research, the path to finding your best funding partners. And it's going to be presented by Michelle Edmond. And you all know Michelle. Michelle's been with us for a long time, and she's been a consultant. Also, if you feel that you're going to need a consultant, or someone to work with you one-on-one, I'm sure that you put it in that survey. And if you put it in that survey, we will, do we have the ability, Ebony, to know who needed who said that they wanted a consultant?
Ebony had to jump off.
Shy,
I
do you
don't
know?
think it was on one of the surveys that we did today. It wasn't on any of the polls today.
Okay, so Shy, is there an email account that where someone could request? The other thing is that we can send that question out to everybody who was on this training.
If people, I mean, people can email us, I'll put it in the chat, but at info@occurnow.org. So I'll put that in the chat too.
Okay, and the other thing we'll do is we will send you an email to ask if this is something you're interested in applying to do, because that essentially is grant money. The foundation pays for a consultant to work with you under that program one-on-one and to improve your proposals or to help you through the process, or even to have that special training. Let me just say quickly before we go off, it is important that you tap into the universities around here, those young people who can write. I am willing to give them the training and work with them so that they can work with you. So remember that. Let's be a little bit more creative about how we get these proposals out. The other thing we're going to look into is possibly getting you some information about finding individual donors, okay? So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michelle.